This is cool. I think we should do this here all the time. Nice facility. All right, as is our custom, let's start with the Pledge of Allegiance, if you care to follow with us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. All right, Chair moves approval of the agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Any additions or comments on the agenda? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? In the way of announcements, our next school board, or our finance meeting will be 7 a.m. September 10th, and the next regular board meeting is September 14th in this building at 7 p.m. Treasurer's report, please, Mr. Harrison.
Yes, for the month of, ooh, that's loud. For the month of July, we begin with Charity Aid Foundation, J. Schneider, MWHS, $87.32. Weiser Insurance Company, Community Scholarships, $500. Shirley Hills PTA, Shirley Hills, $20,654.74. And Grandview PTO, PSS Supplies, $833.80. Mr. Chair, fellow board members, I've looked at the check ledger for June. All looks in order. I did not have a chance to look at the July checks, so that will be postponed till the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Student Representative Claire and Amelia. Welcome.
Okay, hi, I'm Claire Fitzik.
And I'm Amelia Pettit.
And we are co-presidents this year of Student Senate. So we're just here to tell you a little bit about what's been going on this summer and going into the school year with the school and students. So first off with athletics, the summer practices, football, baseball, boys and girls hockey, boys and girls swimming, cross country, boys and girls soccer, boys and girls tennis, boys and girls basketball, bowling, dance team, trap shooting. They have all had summer practices getting ready for the potential season. Recently, the eminent HSL released that football and volleyball were moved to start March 15th through May 15th. Bowling and trap shooting are good to go. Girls tennis, cross country, girls swimming, and soccer are allowed to start their practice season on 8/17 with games and competitions TBD.
For arts, Band Council had multiple meetings over Zoom and recently met in person with their team of leaders to plan an inclusive and productive year despite the circumstances. And then for academics, we have graduation that was held on Hadorf on July 23rd. The seniors were so grateful that we were able to make it work and were able to have an in-person graduation.
For activities, DECA recently announced their chapter projects. West Tonka Listens team is including Blake Lee, Gabriella Fortune, and Hallie Deerbeck. Like a Girl project is including Anna Elliott, Katie Clark, and Avery Robbins. 3, Net Zero, including Anna Ryer, Laura Sonderberg, and Katherine Collins. And then finally, Rise Up West Tonka includes Avery Fink, Grace Peterson, and Lily Saprell.
The WAC was able to open recently, and then Student Senate, we helped create the balloon decorations for graduation. The officers and executive board had a meeting last Thursday to plan for a retreat and upcoming school year. Our retreat is on August 12th from 8 to 12 in the courtyard. We will be planning for our year and spending time with our new Senate.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, are there any committee reports? I would just like to report on, we formed an ad hoc committee of Member Bowie and Member Carlson and myself, and we've been meeting to review the opening plans and just get some board input before this meeting, reviewing lots of data and lots of ideas and suggestions. And I just want to say, you know, nobody's going to be happy. Everybody's going to be unhappy. And I just, you know, it's a difficult situation, but I really want to commend Superintendent Borg and his staff. The amount of time and effort and contingency plans that they've done, and, you know, I think there were, I don't know, 4 different well thought out graduation plans that kept, you know, the only thing that's a given is things are going to change when education department or the governor finally decides something, and you got to be ready because you don't get much timing. And I just commend the amount of work that's gone into this and the seriousness of the study and the recommendations and the research. Just as people view this and comment, just keep in mind that it's hard not to be emotional, but people are doing the best they can, and there's a ton of effort. I don't think Kevin slept for most of the last semester. So with that, I'll turn it over to Superintendent Borden. I'm sorry, Les Kelly or Brian want to further comment?
The online video is cut off, so the 100 people that are online they can't hear or see what's going on, just as a FYI.
Do you want to pause this while we get it fixed, or is it a long-term problem, Becca?
So I just want to make sure before I begin that people can hear with this mic. And so if we can get some feedback that this goes, because this presentation is intended for those that are home as well. Okay, thank you. So we gather here today to talk about school reopening, and that's a normal thing for a superintendent to engage with the community at this time of the year. And normally summers lend themselves at this time. The pace is really picking up, and we're working hard to plan for that new year. And obviously this is quite the exception. It is on a whole new level. I want to start off just briefly because we have a longer presentation, but I got to start off with some thanks. First of all, to our school board. It's an honor to work under a school board, and sometimes people ask me, Kevin, why do you find Westonka your home? And the reason why it finds a home is those that I work with, that they care about kids and they try to do the best for kids, and that's our staff, that's our board, that's our community. And I thrive on the energy and the challenge of how we can do the best, but definitely we have a board that really thinks about our staff and our students and how we can do the best job. I want to say thanks to all the community members that have reached out to me, and I've heard you. And there's a lot of different voices, and a lot of voices saying different things with a lot of passion. And I don't care if you emailed me 5 times a day or if it was just once. Your voice was heard. So to our seniors that are concerned about their year, to people that are worried about childcare, to people that are worried about their health or their family's health, to people that are questioning, how do we deliver this type of education? How do my kids receive this type of education? When you look at the number of questions and concerns, I understand the intensity, why everyone's so thirsty for understanding. And what I can tell you is we are too. And so we're taking in news as fast as it comes, and it's not an exaggeration by telling you, definitely these last 2 weeks, but it's really been going on since March, we have been working around the clock 7 days of a week to do the best job we can for this community, knowing that there's different perspectives. And so for those of you that are frustrated, I completely understand. And yet, what we have here today is how we are going to be moving forward, and I want to take time to make sure that I can answer a lot of your questions. Finally, I just want to talk about my administrative team and a lot of people in the community and staff members outside their contract. A lot of people have sacrificed a lot. So when we look at this work, this is the work of a lot of fingerprints of people just trying to do their best. We got a few budget items that we're not going to do that report here today. But I want to start off by saying the work didn't stop this summer, and that really helped us. This was done intentionally because we wanted to make sure that we kept on running programs so we knew how to face this challenge. And you look at what's all happened, we've had a lot of students and staff on our campus, and we've been working at how do we keep them safe, how do we run a quality program, how can we make these flexes that we see that's coming from MDH and others. And so I'm not going to read through these, but there's been a lot happening with a lot of planning and a lot of adjusting. And we gained a lot of experience out of that. And I want to thank Mark McEmoyle and the planning committee, his administrative assistant, Jen Bourne, Marty, a lot of people. Having that graduation on Hador Field was good for the soul. I felt bad for the seniors of things that they lost. I got choked up in my short speech, but the fact of the matter is that we were glad that we could have them there. So let's talk about the safe learning model. On June 15th, we got a direction from the governor about that we should be prepared for 3 different models. And with that direction, there was guidance from MDE and MDH on how we should prepare. The words were that we need to be prepared to switch from any one of these models. And the 3 models are distance, hybrid, and in-person. On July 31st, we were going to get the decision of how to open, and what came to us was a model that allowed flexibility in local communities, but also adherence to state guidelines. And in the end, the people that will have the control of how you do it will be the state. But there is local input. And so with this plan, you're going to see that it's really based on regional data, county data, that we are expected to make decisions, and based on that data, we can determine our model. So when you look at this, and this was emailed out to everybody, you can see the equation at the bottom of the page, the total number of cases the last 14 days, divided by the county population over 10,000, and that gives you this rate. And when we look at the rate, the in-person learning for all students is 0 to 10, elementary in person, but middle high school hybrid is 10 to 20, and you can read those on. And for those of you that are online, you're seeing this presentation, but if you want to go to the website, it's posted now on our website. You can see that there's more flexibility for elementary students and secondary students. They made a difference of how this spreads between the 2 levels. When we looked at our county information, we see the Hennepin County data, and you'll see July 5th through the 18th, some of the data there, and then you can see the more recent data. And you can see that Hennepin County has gone up, Wright County has stabilized, and Carver County has gone down. Now, the one thing that the state said that we can do is that through a consultation, we can go to a less restrictive model. But you can always, as a board, make a decision to go to a more restrictive model. And so with this advice of where our placement is in Hennepin County, bordering Carver County, bordering Wright County, we asked for a consultation with MDH. Now, if you look at Hennepin County's numbers, that would fall in the line of hybrid. That is the max in which we would be able to exceed. Both in hybrid would be that limit in Hennepin County without a consultation. With our consultation, we were able to meet with them on August 3rd, and we reviewed the local data, and through that, we presented how we were opening up, and they gave us approval for in-person primary, but middle school and high school would be hybrid. And the reason why they differentiated the 2, one is how they view primary versus secondary, but it also has to do with primary being more often in cohorts versus mixing, the size of classes, how some of the busing is working. So they gave us the ability to go into a less restrictive model. So Hennepin County was hybrid. Through our consultation, we went to an elementary in-person, middle school hybrid. Our numbers would not allow us to go all in person, and again, the board has the authority to go into a more restrictive. So with that information, we took a look at some of the survey results we got from staff and from parents. We had 223 staff responses, 1,250 roughly parent-family responses. We read a lot of appreciation of our staff's effort that they put in distance learning, a lot of appreciation and empathy for how there was a short period of time and the effort that was made. But with that said, the majority of staff, 71%, wanted to either be fully in person or hybrid, and the majority of parents, 84%, wanted to be fully in person or hybrid. And so when the committee of the board and I looked at this data, looking at what staff and parents had to say, in representing that viewpoint, we went with the less restrictive versus the more restrictive of the models that was allowed for the board to consider. Now, these survey results were emailed to families. You can take a look at them. They're also going to be up on our website. Now, the other thing that we talked, and we're going to get in more detail, is we did a survey for the different hybrid schedules. We put 4 out there, and the one that came back with the highest ranking by staff, narrow but a little bit, and by parents, also not a wide margin but a little bit, was the AB, and then a distance on Friday. So what we proposed, and what the board is proposed to take action on, is that to start the year, we would offer in-person learning, early learning, through grade 4 at Hilltop and Shirley Hills. Again, in-person would be that the students would attend 5 days a week, and that would be for our enrollment both at Hilltop and at Shirley Hills. And then preschool, you got an email today, if you're a preschool parent, about how we're opening in-person preschool. And then for grades 5 through 12, we are looking at doing the AB hybrid schedule. And so your students will have set days. So your child may have school Mondays and Wednesdays, distance on Friday, or you might have Tuesdays and Thursdays as your schedule. And that's broken down by alphabet A through K, L through Z. Now, there's been some question about A through K, L through Z. To balance classes, that's why we took that approach. We cannot do that by grades and balance classes. We wanted to keep families together for daycare, but we also, when we do a hybrid, and we need to have 50%, and we'll get into this, social distancing, we got to try to get half our kids in the building that works with the schedule, and that was the best way that we were able to accomplish that. So to start this school year, you're going to have in-person early learning through 4th. You're going to have hybrid 5 through 12, and all families will have the choice to do distance learning if that is what their preference. That is what's going to the board for the resolution. Now, there's one other piece to it, though, is again, this is based on the county data. And on August 20th, we are going to get a data update that we have to make our decision on. So we have to confirm that in our community, we have not had a spike of rates, or it could be a drop-off of rates, that would change plans. What I have to tell parents, in this year, you have to be prepared that you could be in person, you have to be prepared you could be in hybrid, and you have to be prepared that you could be distance. And I get the challenges for childcare, for your child's education, the opportunities, everything that you're concerned about. I get it also for people that are concerned about safety and how that could work, being in or not. But in this model, you very likely could be in person, hybrid, distance, all in the same year. And so every 14 days, we're going to get new data from the county that we will be responding to. This isn't just for Westonka, this is for every school district in the state of how we're basing these decisions. And so it's very important, I can't stress this enough, it's very important that we have contingency plans, staff, parents, that we could go between these different models. Now, as far as the time, if we have to switch from one model to the other, at the beginning, and depending on when we get that information, there could be a break between those two, depending on what's going on, or it could be that that's seamless. And so that communication would be coming out when we'd have to make a change. So, because it's possible that you could experience all three models, what I want to take time today is to talk about all three. And I want to start off by just talking about safety precautions. I'll tell you, we spent an incredible amount of time on trying to look at how can we keep our schools as safe as possible for our students and staff. We have talked to MDH, we have talked to local medical physicians, doctors. We've talked to engineers. We've talked to a lot of people that are engaged in our community of how we can create safe plans. We've talked to staff, and we've had staff engaged with our plans. We've engaged with different questions, concerns. We've talked to students about that have connected with us. So there's a lot of people that have talked about safety. And I have to tell you, there's no magic solution. It's just hard work. I know everyone would like to know that there's this product that's going to do it. But I'll tell you, in my viewpoint, and those of you that have known, this is my 15th year as a superintendent in this community, and when we have a challenge, I throw myself on it. And what's been keeping me literally up day and night is I want to have the best plan. And we hear other communities come up with different ideas, and rather than just pass them and say, no, we got our thing, analyzing everything that I can, putting the effort to make sure that we have the best for this community. And really what it comes down to, we need to have good communication, we need to have collaborative, constructive collaboration, and we need to have consistency. And if we can apply those three standards to what I'm going to be talking about here, we hold a very good chance. We will have COVID exposure in this community and our schools, but we hold a very good chance to do this very safely. And so, with our safety precautions, MDH and MDE has a list of the requirements that we must follow. We don't look at how we can dodge around those, we look at how we can do those well. We have a district health coordinator, our district nurse. I want to thank Kelly. Through the summer, outside of her contract, has worked tirelessly with us, keeping up with MDH, talking to people in the community, others, about how we can do this well. Each building will have their own COVID coordinators that's going to help manage the communication, the challenges, lessons learned. We have to do a really good job with staff training for all staff on this going forward. You're going to see a limit of large group gatherings and how we do that in all models. You're going to see that change. You're going to see a change in policies of visitors and volunteers, of who's allowed into the buildings and who isn't, and more restrictions there. Now, these safety precautions that I'm going over, this exists for all three models. You're going to see some more that apply to hybrid than what all three would have. You're going to see a change in arrival and dismissal. So when the buses come, kids are not going to be congregating around in the hallways. They need to go straight to their classes. When they leave, they're going to be going straight to their buses or their cars. There's going to be a lot of effort around social distancing, cleaning, social distancing, how we wear our masks, all really important, keeping people safe. Social distancing is something that we have to do a lot of education, a lot of training on. Classroom seating, you're going to see changes in how we put people around the room. Healthy hygiene. We have a lot of hand sanitizer. A lot. If this does, well, we got a lot. So where I'd really put this is at your classrooms, it's not just saying it's available. You're going to see us pushing this, that kids need to use this when they leave the classes, when they come into the classes, when they go to the lunchrooms. We're going to be directing kids. Now, they can bring their own, but we need them to use this so that we can keep them safe, that we can keep them in school. And so it's not just, it's available, but you're going to see direction around that. Also, washing hands. Face coverings. The governor executive order has it that all people, that's kindergartners through seniors, will be wearing face coverings on school transportation and in our buildings. You're going to see that if you have a disability, a medical or mental health condition, there are some exceptions that if you bring a doctor's note, you're going to be able, we'll work with you on those exceptions. Early learning students will be encouraged, but they are not required by the statute. And you're going to see that we're going to be providing a cloth mask to staff members and students, but we are going to have thousands of face masks at school, and we really need to work with our families on this. A lot of kids forget things. And I think about a young Kevin Borg, where I probably have 4 of these in my room and I'm still borrowing one. We really need to work to make sure that we send kids with their face masks when they come to school. But we will have backups at school if people forgot, both on the bus and then also in the school. You're going to see about mask removal that there's times, obviously, when you're eating, you're drinking, certain physical activities as outlined by the Department of Health. Face shields. We will have a face shield for all staff and all students in grades K through 8. We're going to have a supply beyond that. So face shields are available for K-8 students when wearing a face covering is problematic. Teachers can wear a face shield. Anybody can wear a face shield if they want to do that in addition. And you can look through some of those exceptions. And the board will be taking action on a face covering policy here today. One of the rules is that we need to have a policy in place, and so that has come before them today. Passing times. You're going to see that we're going to have to work with passing times. We're going to see how kids traffic and how we can help them not congregate so we can keep them safe. You're going to look at school materials, and not all materials are going to be shared the same way, and so there could be a restriction of certain things, or how we have to clean them in between use. Those are challenges when you look at some classrooms of how we normally operate. You look at a kindergarten classroom, or you look at Biet, or you look at science of what kind of supplies. We're going to be working with our staff on how that all happens. Water fountains, we're going to be encouraging students to bring their own water bottles and hopefully to be able to refill that. Ventilation. We've had conversations with technicians, with community experts, with medical staff. We've talked to people that know a lot about filtration, and we're looking at positive airflow in our buildings and how we work with climates at times to make sure that we find that right balance. One thing that I'm thankful of is over time, you look at our renovations back in 2011 until this time, we've been with the same engineers, and they're familiar with our buildings, and they're familiar with our staff. And so it's coordination of how we can work on the airflow. Recess, you're going to see recess. So for example, at the primaries, recess will be more by pods of students, of how they go out there and not intermingling with that. And then you're going to see alternative learning spaces. There's going to be spaces outdoors that kids are going to be able to use and teachers are going to be able to use. Now these are common safety practices across all those models. They're common that we've really invested, and I'm so thankful again to work for a board that understands this. But we've received some federal CARES Act money, and there's federal CARES Act money in some of our cities that they're in conversation because they're not qualified to use, and they can perhaps bring those to the school district. If they don't use them, they lose them. Now with these federal dollars, we're putting those things to added custodians. We're putting it to technology help. We're putting it to a lot of cleaning products. We're putting it to staffing. We're putting a lot of different places. But there's a portion of these dollars also that we got to get in the hands of educators. Every year, we have teachers and staff that give money of their own on how to best educate our kids. And this year is only going to be heightened in that. And so we're going to be working this next week giving communication to buildings on how there's unique needs with different educators of what they're seeing, of how they can stay safe and their kids safe in their classrooms, that we're going to allocate funds that they can have some of the independence of some of that decision making. And so when we look, there's a lot of things we have to do district-wide. But one thing that I've received a lot of communication is interest by different staff members for different things that's going to help them be more effective in their classroom. And so we need to allocate funds so they can be able to do that, and that process will be communicated next week. When we look at teaching and learning supports, these are across all levels again. You're going to see responsive instruction so that we're focusing on the most essential in this. So we talk about those as our core benchmarks. We got to hit on those. We will be taking daily attendance. That's going to be a difference of what you experienced last year in distance learning. We're going to be looking at special ed services in hybrid and also in an in-person model of how, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in an accompanying slide. We've learned from last spring of how we can continue to improve and how we give mental health. One thing that we heard is that people talked about the mental health needs of their kids. And part of it is the social interactions that they're missing. And there's other things where different kids have different situations at home and lack supports. And so what can we do? Also, one-on-one technology will continue to be available. And I want to thank the community on this. That distance learning, a lot of communities were not in that place. And I can't thank you enough of supporting our schools so we do have that technology. There's going to be a distance-only option. So if this is your choice, you can be 100% distance. And new this year, we're going to be creating, the board will be taking action today that we are approving 4 distance learning coordinators in our district. This is a significant investment by our board to ensure that we can do a better job with distance learning. We appreciate the support and the recognition that the community had on our staff's efforts, and they did a really good job with the time and how this was thrown. But we've taken survey data both by staff and parents, and we know that we can do a better job. One of it is by structure, but there's another piece of we need more support. Our staff needs more staff development. They need assistance. And when you look at the bullets under these distance learning coordinators, this is going to look different at the different levels, but it could be very much working with our students, or it could be working more with our staff so they can be effective with their students. And so buildings are going to have some flexibility of how they can best utilize this time and talent so they can do and help our kids have a better distance learning experience. And then lastly, staff development. I mentioned that we need more staff development for our staff, and what we're going to be moving is our March 26th and our May 7th day. This doesn't change the schedule for parents. We're just front loading these days. We got to get these days before the school year so we have more time with our staff in here. And I got to thank our staff again. Outside their contract, teachers do this anyway. This year, they're putting in an incredible amount of time trying to figure out how they can be most effective in doing distance learning while they have kids in school. That's a challenge, and they're putting a lot of time, and this is our way to hopefully help them with that. So, let me dive into the in-person model. Now again, I want to be careful that you understand that your child could be in any one of these this year. It's based on that county data. Board has to have a consultation to be less restrictive, but they could be more restrictive. We know to start this year, early learning through 4th grade is what we're proposing is to be in person if the August 20 data allows us to do that. So, students in school, they're attending 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. You're going to see a lot of similarities in education with kids, but you're going to see things where more of those MDH requirements on safety of how we share, they're going to be more confined to their pods. When they go out to recess, it's not going to be all kindergarten running around the playground. It's going to be more sectioning off areas so they don't intermingle. We're going to be following the MDH requirements in an in-person model. But when we get into the classrooms, you're going to see that 5 days a week, that normal schedule that you experienced last year, as far as the bells will happen. In primary school, when we start off, we want to make sure that we connect with our kids and we establish those relationships and we start building the structures that's going to help them be successful in school. If we switch to a distance or a hybrid model, that they start learning some of these tools. A lot of people know my wife teaches kindergarten, and you can imagine that that's important that we teach those kids on how to operate. It's not just that grade, it's all these kids coming in, and how do you make sure that that works. For the high school students, you're going to see that if we're able to do middle school and high school in-person learning, you're going to see blended learning where we have direct teacher instruction and also using tools like Schoology so that they can have a good learning experience. One thing I want to say with the in-person is we're going to be printing out fourth quarter benchmarks for especially our math and language arts teachers, so they have those. So when students are coming back and they're experiencing school, teachers are going to be aware of what was to be covered the year before, and so they know if there's certain gaps that we can try to address it. We're not reteaching starting back quarter four, but we have to empower them that they have that information readily so they know what was covered if they start seeing some things in school so we can adapt. The in-person distance only. So if, for example, how we're expected to start based on that August 20th information for early learning through 4, if families choose that they want to do distance learning, they will have an option to enroll. We're going to be pushing out tomorrow in an email a sign up for distance learning. Interesting enough, it's already live on Skyward. We already have people enrolling. And so if you're one of those that's already in, that's a very West Tonka thing. They know systems and they're already ahead of before it happens. But that's going to close on August 17th, I believe, around noon. That might seem short for people to make a decision. We need that information so we can plan for your kids. And so for those people choosing distance learning, I'll get into a little bit of how that's going to work at the primary and the high school. The other way that you could go into distance learning is if you have one of the symptoms, if you're quarantined. And that would probably be a 14-day or less that you would be in distance learning, and we'll talk about how that works. So things to know about the distance learning. I talked about that we're going to support it with the distance coordinator. At the primary level, it really depends on registration numbers. We have to see how many kindergartners we get, how many first graders we get, so forth. We have to take a look if it is something that we want to use this coordinator, if numbers are low, or if we have enough numbers that a staff gets dedicated to running that cohort. But we definitely see the distance learning group in cohort or cohorts. They will be following the same curriculum. They're going to be following the same pacing. And so if a student does go from the situation that they're in person and they have to be quarantined, it's aligned. We're going to have our staff who prepares those lessons work with our cohorts so they're getting the same curriculum. For the secondary, it's a little bit different. You're going to have a schedule and you're going to see how we do the education with some of the live teaching that exists, some of the supports, but you're going to follow your schedule in this piece versus having a cohort. Now, I think it goes without saying certain electives could be very much modified in a distance learning option. So that's in person, and if you were to go distance learning or quarantined in that model. Next, I want to talk about hybrid. Now this is where we're proposing middle school and high school to start the year based on the same information that I provided you. It also could be that if our data gets worse on August 20th, that we do not have that exception. Primary could be hybrid. So in a hybrid learning model, you're at 50% capacity of the numbers in buildings. So that's fire code. On buses, it's 50%. But there's very strict social distancing. We're expected to keep 6-foot social distancing in this model. MDH, we got to follow their safety precautions, and you're going to see blended learning where when they're in school, in person, but then we're going to be using the technology tools to connect our kids. I want to talk a little bit about how we chose AB, and Friday beyond the survey results. One thing that was really important when we talked to a group is that all kids have access to in-person learning. Now, one thing with hybrids, when you go around, you're going to see a lot of different models. And for different people, certain models are more attractive, other ones are more attractive. And so you're going to look around, different people are doing, some people are doing it exactly how we're doing it, and some people are doing it different. We have neighbors in all camps. But what was important to us is that if you're a kindergartner or if you're a senior, you have access to in-person learning in our school. The second thing is we need to adhere to the MDH 6-foot social distancing at all times. And so when we look at that, one thing was bus ridership. One challenge was at the beginning when we got news about this, they were saying 6-foot social distancing on a bus. That would be 13 people on a bus. That change that allowed it to go to 50%, which is 38 people on a bus, happened the end of July. I can honestly tell you on that one thing, it's not hours, just me, and this is not counting my team, days of trying to think through an education delivery with 13 people on a bus. But this is the time that we're in, things change. We looked at our available learning space, and so we had our engineers apply 6-foot social distancing in all of our classrooms to come up with occupancies of what we have. We wanted to look at the interest in distance learning because that could alter our numbers. On the survey, it shows about 12%. We wanted staff and parent feedback, so we had staff that were talking to us. We're working with union groups, and we gathered different input on some of the different options. But we got to AB distance on Friday, partly through feedback from staff and parents at that point, but the AB model was important for us that all kids wanted in school, and we had to adhere to the social distancing. Now, when we look at some of the space, we cannot just add a bunch of other classrooms in. You can figure out how can you divide your gym into 2, a media center into 2, but to get to this 6-foot social distancing, we run out of space. The second thing is you run out of staff and qualified staff, and I'll talk about staffing in a little bit. And then finally, the busing. And so we landed there for those reasons. As we've communicated, Group A would attend school Mondays and Wednesdays. Every Monday, Wednesday, we wanted that. We gave options to parents in the survey, but where that's attractive is you know what your schedule with your kids when they're home and when they're at school. And B would be on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So the first day of school will be a B day on September 8th. So A through K is A, L through Z is B. Now we know it's hard for people that if it's friend groups or whatnot, that there's a split, and it's just another challenge that's faced in this. But the effort was we wanted to get kids in our building, and we have to adhere to those because otherwise our numbers are going to be off. So when we apply, for example, an A through K, L through Z, which was the most even way that we could split our numbers, you can imagine that when you're in AP Chem, and then those kids go to their next class, which could be biology, on AP Chem, they could have, even with the split, 20 kids in their class, 25 kids in their class, and then on the other one, they have 10. We do high school by interest and ability of what they want. And so what our staff is working through is what are classes that can handle different size of kids, or what are other spaces we can use. So literally going over every single class for an A, every class for a B, comparing it to our room size, looking at what other options we can have so that we can make sure we do this safely. And so when there's different requests, so can you do this or that? And you hear the answer, no, it's because those are maxed in that way. Now with Friday Distance for all students, we're going to have teacher check-ins with our students. They're going to continue to work on their curriculum. And I'll tell you, when we have staff that's working on providing a distance and an in-person at the same time, they need time to prepare so they can do that well. And so we will have check-ins for them. There's going to be lessons that kids are working on, but we also have to give time to our staff so they can get ready with the work. And some of that is checking with kids how they're doing it. Some of it could be creating videos and different things they have to make, so that's a rich experience. So we look at our AB distance learning schedule. That should be something that's familiar that has been sent out. I talked a little bit about A through K, L through Z. We wanted the people in the same household, And if you have different last names, you should have received an email of where you're assigned. So if you have kids with different last names, they can be on the same day. You're going to see in a hybrid that there is the possibility that some English learner or students with special ed services, for some of our higher need students, that you could receive additional days on site. Case managers will be connecting with families the week of August 17th. Now, again, one thing that you're going to get in all these plans, the information that you've been getting largely is from district. It's going to start coming from buildings coming up. And this week, you're going to have an email from our school buildings about a timeline of what you can expect, more and more information from the schools. Now, this is in part because we're working with our staff to build and get these details all pulled together. So we have teams of teachers and other people that are coming in, and we're working through the details so we can keep on releasing it with you. But you're going to get an email from building principals this week about a timeline so you know when to expect certain information. And then each week you're going to be getting some information about how, so you can know more details of the schedule and how things are working. So again, I talked some about this, but the 50% capacity, what you see there is a Hilltop classroom. So that's not high school, but that's Hilltop. One thing that I want to make sure is that our teachers, we can help them and make sure that they're comfortable in their classrooms. They have 6 feet as they work in those environments. So we look at classroom setup, and you're going to see one thing that we're changing is furniture. So we are taking out of common areas our furniture where kids gather because we can't allow them to cluster. You're going to see that staff are rearranging furniture in classroom to ensure that social distancing works. Lockers, grades 5 through 12 will not be using their lockers in a hybrid model. And why? Because of the distancing. When you go into those locker banks, it's tight. And so we're going to not be using the lockers in that model. And I talked a little bit about the alternative learning space. Hybrid learning, we know from what we learned in the past with distance that relationships are key. We know that it's important to have live interactions. And so when you're distanced, that we provide those. Again, I talked about the coordinator. And we're also enhancing technology tools. Now, we're in a good place, but at the high school, not everyone has sound amplification, and so we're purchasing more of that. You can imagine if you have a shield, a mask, and speaking to your kids. We want to be clear that people understand, and so we're purchasing equipment there. We're also purchasing equipment for external cameras and microphones so live streaming can be more effective. Now, with part of that, we're buying things, testing them, making sure that they work, and we'll continue to adapt, add, adjust as we need. And so rather than just buying one of everything for everybody, we're buying things where we think we can implement this well, test it out. And so you might see with some things a little bit of a phase-in. With the hybrid teaching at Hilltop, so let's talk a little bit more specifically. In the daily classroom connections, you're going to be going to school on your day, and you're going to meet together in your class. But when you're home, you're going to have a morning Zoom or some connection where you're connected to those staff on those distance days. So you still are connected to your class on that. You're going to have consistent schedules, and so that we can follow the standard-based learning and pace that curriculum. And we got to be sensitive to the needs of the families, but we know that it's going to need more structure to allow this to be successful. At Grandview Middle School, you're going to see daily screencasts and videos. You're going to see academic support at the start of each class and on Fridays. In-person students and students at home will receive the same lessons. At the high school, the in-person schedules will be revised to meet the student needs of the students. We're going to minimize the movement of students throughout the day. On your distance days, distance learners will receive the instruction during the regular class times via live streaming or through online pathways like Schoology. And so what's going to be different at the high school is that you're going to be following more of a schedule than what you had in the spring. There's going to be wind time, and that's going to be really valuable in a hybrid model. You're going to be able to connect with the teachers that you have different needs with, and you're going to be able to get help. Now, in a hybrid, there's also distance only. And you can see just by the nature of it that there's more structure, there's more kids that are going to be distanced more days. And so you can see, again, at the primary level, you're going to have your cohort. And then at the secondary, you're going to be following those schedules. So in all these models right now, we're working with staff, putting together these details. You're going to be getting more details from buildings as we build this with our teachers to make sure that their fingerprints and DNA on how we get this done. A lot of work is really happening fast. I want to thank again our administration and our teachers and others for putting this together. So the primary distance only, again, your cohorts. Your secondary are going to be following that schedule, 5 days from home. Again, electives are going to be modified. And if you are quarantined again, you're going to be doing that for that period of time. Again, everything's going to be staying on a similar pace, same curriculum. So the distance option. So here's some of the lessons that we learned from the spring. Again, appreciation of the community's empathy and appreciation of our staff's efforts. We know that relationships are key. We know that schools need to be sensitive to the needs of working families. We know that we need to increase structure with some of our levels. We also know that there's curriculum instruction that has to be on the most essential, and we have to address student mental health needs. We also know that we have to give more staff development to our staff. We have to provide them support so they feel like they can be successful in this model. In this, again, in distance, you're going to see it 5 days a week. And so you've heard me talk about this. You're going to have your technology devices. You're going to see that you have full access to the subject that is going to be taught. You're going to see more structure in there. You're going to have more live instruction and support than what you experienced this past spring. Talked about staff development already and talked about the distance learning. Talked about the student's day in distance. There's going to be more live instruction, more pre-recorded instruction tutorials. Accountability, you're going to see that attendance is something that will be changed in this model. So, that's the teaching and learning side of it. There's going to be more questions saying, what's the schedule look like? You will be getting that. You're going to be saying, when you say more live streaming or more videos, what does that look like? You're going to get more information on that. How will wind time work? You'll get more information about it. But what you should know, whether you choose distance, hybrid, or in person, we're pacing and using the same curriculum in all of those models. So let's talk a little bit about health services now as we look at this plan. Preventive practices, staff and students. This is what we need. We need every staff and every student and every parent to take this serious. We need people to screen, self-screen, screen your kids. We need to look for those symptoms. We're going to be communicating them out regularly to people. But if you've tested positive to COVID, you're going to have to be quarantined. If you're showing symptoms of COVID, you are going to have to be quarantined. If you have recently had close contact with people, you're going to have a quarantine level. And so students and staff are going to be educated on this, on how we make sure we practice washing our hands, hand sanitizer, the importance of social distance, all those things that's going to keep us safe. But some of you have seen the MDH decision tree that we're expected to follow. And so if you've received a lab test positive for COVID, it's 10 days since the symptoms. If it's a negative test with no other diagnosis, it's 10 days since the symptom that you be quarantined. If you have the symptoms but don't have a lab test, it'll be stay at home 10 days since that appeared. And then for people that have another diagnosis, you will stay home until the symptoms have improved according to what that is. So for example, that would be more something like strep or something else. In this is what MDH has set. This isn't what we choose to do. This is how and what we must follow when you're quarantined. I talked about the daily symptom screening, so all students and all staff will be doing this. And you must stay home if you reply yes to any of the following. Do you have an onset of a cough or a shortness of breath? Or at least two of the following, which would be a fever, a loss of smell, taste, a muscle ache, sore throat, chills, or nausea. If you have the onset of the symptoms listed above with no other diagnosis, have you had anyone in close contact that's been diagnosed with COVID? Have you asked to isolate or quarantine by a medical professional? All those things. Now, the purpose of the self-screening is, one, it's recommended by CDC. Two, we took time in talking to local medical doctors the best way that we can screen, and they talked about the importance of self-screening. We looked at the importance of this, and we really believe this is the best way that we can keep people safe. Now, we're aware different people might be screening temperatures at the door, but when we examine, we talk to other people, and what CDC and others say, it's not accurate always because of the equipment. There's different conditions. At times, a lot of people have experiences of some of the false readings. It's only one of the several symptoms. And so we're really pushing the self-screening. And if we have a student that's showing symptoms, we will be educating staff on how they should send them to the nurse. And we'll have an isolation room and where the nurse can analyze if the student needs to go home and what those next steps would be. Symptomatic individuals, we're going to have, if you have a positive test, you will need to call our district nurse to start this process. Families are asked to indicate reasons for absence in Skyward or email the attendance line. If you have positive, you need to contact Kelly, our district nurse. And we will then also, for kids that have symptoms, we will be using our nurses and our isolation room. There's really two cases of a positive test, how we're going to find out about it. One is MDH will contact us, and we're going to work with what they call a regional support team, which is comprised of MDE and MDH on the contact tracing. Now, in contact tracing, our experience over the summer is that could be 1 or 2 days of what that process looks like, of how they do that work. The regional team will directly communicate to families the quarantine process, so that will come to them. If we see clusters of positive cases, that could push our district COVID support team, which would be a committee of the board, myself, and our school nurse, district nurse, to say, we need you to quarantine. Prior to the start of the school, again, all staff, or I didn't say this yet, all staff through the state will be provided with one saliva test so they can have that in case they have concerns. So that is if MDH contacts Westonka. Let's talk about our community. Most likely we're going to find out about it before MDH. That's how we work. And so we will be reporting it to MDH. They'll immediately we're going to start the contact tracing. Again, the regional support team is going to work with us and then communicate to those families. And again, if there's clusters, it could be our district needs to advise a quarantine until we get more information from them. I talked about the support team. Let's talk a little bit about data privacy. A lot of people want to have information if there's a positive result and it's in their school or in their class, and they want that information soon. There's data privacy laws that we're not able to disclose the student, but we also understand the importance that people have kids with different medical concerns, and this information is aware and they want to be informed. It's really important that we want to be transparent where we can with families, and so we're working through how we can announce when we have a positive case and the amount of details, and that's a work that we're doing with MDH. But our commitment is for staff, for parents, for students, we got to respect the data privacy laws, but we also want to inform you so you can make the right choices for your family if you hear of a positive case. Now, truth is, we're going to have positive cases in our school, and families are going to have to think about how do they want to navigate that. And we're going to work with our staff on navigating that. When it takes a while for contact tracing, that can be unnerving to some. They got to do their work. With it, we want to make sure that what we can provide so you can make those decisions, you can. Now, we talk about the deadline of distance learning, August 17th, but remember, as families, you always have the choice to go to distance learning if that is a choice that you want to make. Let's talk a little bit about facility cleaning. The board in July took action on adding 2 custodians. The purpose of this is that we have increased needs from how we're doing lunch. We're going to talk about lunch. In a hybrid model, every student has to be 6 feet socially distanced in it. That requires a lot more tables. It requires a lot more cleanup. And so when we look at that process, we know we need extra help. We also want to do more frequent cleaning on high-touch surfaces around the area. We also are going to assign more cleaning responsibilities to staff. So with our teachers and others, we're going to give training on how we clean our spaces. And we're going to be putting a schedule of how that should be working throughout the day. We're trying to buy equipment for our staff and for our custodians so they can do this more effectively. And if we feel like we need more help, we're going to get more help so we can do this well. We need to clean. When we know about and hear more about this, we know that it's on surfaces. If our kids are good with not touching their face and they're good with hand sanitizer, but we know we have a commitment of cleaning. And so with our custodians, they have their normal cleaning schedules. You're going to see an increase throughout the day with high contact areas. You're going to see staff and teachers in their own areas have new expectations of cleaning that we'll provide them training for. And we thank them for their cooperation. We thank our custodians for the importance that they put. It has to be an all hands on deck. And then lastly, we're going to continue to work with our ventilation of how we can make sure that helps. But truthfully, a lot of it is going to be through the cleaning. With food service, we have our food service director here, but I'm going to just talk through this, and if there's questions, Laura, I'll have them direct to you. But you look through these slides and you're going to see all 3 models, we are going to have individually packaged meals. We need to do that because of getting kids through the line and how we can best serve them. And so what we're working on is how we can get some of the favorites that kids have, what they're liking. We're going to package it and we're going to move. I want to thank our food service staff from last March all the way through now. They have served an incredible effort for this community. You look at the number of meals, and this was a group that chipped in right away to make sure that kids had food. And they're still committed to that, and I want to say that I could not be more impressed by their professionalism and how they did their work. In the in-person model, we're going to follow what's called the restaurant guidance, and so that's clusters of 4 6-foot social distance. In a hybrid model, kids have to be 6-foot social distance unless it's in their classroom where they were just in. And then in the distance model, we are going to be delivering what you can experience in the past. Now in the hybrid, you're also going to have a delivery, and for in-person, those people that choose distance, there's going to be a curbside pickup. And for some people that have certain medical needs, there could be some delivery. Want to talk about childcare? We sent a childcare survey to families on August 3rd. Adventure Club will be providing school day before and after school for both primaries under all 3 scenarios. We will be offering school day care for Tier 1 families at Grandview Middle School for ages 12 and under. Social distancing does reduce our capacity, and so we are in pods of 15. That's not 15 kids, that's a total of 15. And we have to adhere, of course, to the standards. So in preschool, they're going to stay in their cohorts. And on our website, you're going to get information. Adventure Club will be sending out information to people on August 17th about the preschool options. When we look at grades K4 on the in-person, we will have before and after school. It's going to be based on the sign-up of the May registration, and you're going to be notified on August 17th about space. The hours before school will be 6:30 to 9:05, after school 3:45 to 6 p.m. For hybrid and distance, we will provide on hybrid distance, of course, childcare for all Tier 1. But we also, through our survey, as it was filled in as of this morning, for those people that asked for hybrid childcare, so on the day that they're off, we had space for those that have signed up to this time based on that survey that was sent out August 3rd. Now, we expect there's going to be more than what we have space for. That survey was sent out to all Shirley Hills and Hilltop families. And there is a cost to families. If you're Tier 1, it's free. But for others, there's a cost, and it will be communicated to you. Grades 5 through 7 is for ages 12 and under, and that's going to be for Tier 1, and that's in all models, and that's for the school day. Let's talk a little bit about transportation. In person, we're going to be running a normal bus schedule, and we are, you're going to see that bus taking all kids that want to ride, but here's a plea from a superintendent is, if you have the ability to drive your kids to school, please drive your kids to school. We know that we're going to see something at our schools of how we handle traffic, and please be patient with us, and we'll figure out how to do it better and better. But if you can drive your kids to school, please drive them to school. Now I say that when you want to talk about keeps you up at night, you know what our lots look like at times at some of our buildings. I mean, even at the high school. I think about my time back when I was a Grandview principal and how we brought all the buses there and we hardly had anyone picking up. And now, I mean, we go out to the road and we know that's what happens. But we will work, we will adjust, have some patience, but if you can, please drive your kids. In a hybrid, we only can have 50%, so our capacity will be 38. And we need to have 6 feet social distancing between the driver and the riders. In a hybrid model, we're going to create as much space as possible, so buses will be loaded from the back to the front, and siblings will be asked to sit together. For transportation registration, everybody must register if you're planning on taking the bus. That communication's going out tomorrow. We ask for that back by August 17th. Stops are going to be limited to your home or your daycare. So buses, we're not going to be able to transport if Wednesdays was a church night or if something else that you say, I'm going to a friend's house. The bus is going to be to your home and back. And in our registration, we account that we know sometimes daycare is different on certain days a week, or there's different locations for mom and dad, or how that works, and so we'll set that up. For transportation, kids are going to be expected to have their face coverings. We'll have extras on the bus. Food and drink, unless it's sent from the school, there should be no food or drink on the bus. And our transportation will be cleaning and disinfecting both high contact and the whole buses as we go through this. Talk a little bit about staffing. You heard me from last spring talking about the need for subs. You know, part of my concern is quarantine students and spread. Part of my other concern is that we have enough staff available. And so we've really pushed with our subs and we've made some changes. One, we got a backup service, and two, we increased our rate of pay during this time. We agreed that we would pay for the licensure fee if you've done 5 days in Westonka. And we really hope that people will consider this. I would say that this way: if you'd be willing to do this, this is a service to your community. This might be employment for some, but think about it as a service to your community that we can have enough staff to fill our classrooms. And so if you have the ability, please go on our website, check out, and consider being a sub. We we're gonna, as I mentioned, we need subs for paraprofessionals, food service, and school and bus. When we look at some of our sub base, our subs are a lot of retired teachers. And so we know that it could be limited with some of these people that are available to do it. We are really thankful that our transportation crew, the majority all say they're coming back. And so we've had success in hiring that. But we know that if people get sick or things can change. So we're looking for subs in all categories. I have pages, if you're interested, of how we're advertising the work that we're doing, but it's truly been an effort to try to do this as well as we can so we have people. Want to also just talk, the board is going to be taking action on leaves of absences. And so we have both general and medical leaves. We have positions that we need to fill. And so we are working ahead of time trying to get people for these positions. I would say that with medical leaves, there's an action item that people on medical leaves that can work remotely. And so there's different conditions of how that could work at primary or secondary, but that we would be live streaming from the home and having an adult supervisor in their classroom. And so they would be live streaming their education into the classroom for these kids. Just talk a little bit about activities. Communication has come out, but the season's been reduced by 30%. Postseason for all sports is to be determined. Football and volleyball has been moved to a March-May schedule. It's a year where there could be 4 seasons. There's different rules on attendance at these events, but there's a lot of different things that right now are listed as going, and that starts next week. And so there'll be information, girls tennis, start date the 17th, end date the 17th, and we have the information of, there's a limit of, like for in swim, how many teams you can compete against and how that works. And Jeff and our coaches will be working through that information. Soccer, swim and dive, cross country. And so moving forward, there's some key dates. Tomorrow we're sending out the distance-only registration and the transportation registration. August 17th, that information is back to us. On August 20th, we get the update on the state data that we will then be connecting with our consultation to ensure we can open up how we plan to open up. Communication will be coming out after that. We have our substitute teacher workshop on the 24th. We have new teachers coming in. We've moved some professional days. We have staff workshop day and the first day of school. You're going to see information posted on our website tomorrow under these categories, and you're going to see that continually updated and built. We're going to try to organize our communication, but I just encourage everybody to pay attention to emails as we update you. But please sign up for the transportation. Please, if you want distance learning, please sign that up. When you do a presentation like this, people want information. You want to give a lot of detail, and yet there's still a lot of detail to give. And more information will be coming. But I want to come back to where I started, is communication, constructive collaboration, consistency. We're going to improve, and we're going to keep on getting better. I can tell you that it truly is a challenge, as I know there's so many different perspectives and hopes. And when it comes to someone's kids and their safety and their opportunities and education, the small school advantages, we want to meet all of that. And obviously we're in a time where we have to make some decisions that doesn't fit right for everyone. But I want to say that I'm committed to continued progress. I'm committed to your kids' safety, our staff safety, and I'm committed to providing the best education that we can. And one thing that we won't fail on is providing our best effort. And so I appreciate those that are online. I appreciate the parents that came in. I open up to the board if you have some questions for me.
Kevin, do people understand what Tier 1 means?
We'll have a classification. I think most people are. It's medical staff, educators. There's a list of who's qualified for that, and they'll be on our website. I think then, if there's not other questions, then just so you know, the board has been, as far as asking questions and giving thoughts, this is thousands of questions along the way. And so we want to open this up for people to give comment or ask questions of our board. How we'd like to do this is there's X's on there where there's social distancing. There's wipes there. If you touch the mic, that you can wipe that down. But we want to open it up to people that are here that you have ability to address. And so if it's all right, Chair Botts, I would turn it over to audience now at this point.
Just ask you to please give your name and maybe where your kids go to which buildings, and try and keep it under 3 minutes, and please be respectful. Nice presentation, Kevin. I get really nervous when Kevin Borg has a 200-page slide deck. And
It was only 88.
was it 88? That's enough.
Hello. Ooh, that works good. Okay. Hi, my name is Vanessa Strong. I have a child at Hilltop Elementary School. 3 things. A little bit of background about me, just so you understand where I'm coming from. I am an essential employee. I am a high-risk parent. I also write operations plans for public services, and I have been since March. I say that because also in
I'm
addition
sorry,
to...
your husband, it's hard to understand.
It
Your
is.
husband has what?
It is okay to take these down while you're speaking? Thank you. So, a few things about me. I do this for a living. I write operations plans, and I have been for the coronavirus since March. I have a master's in education. I have a lot of things, and I am not an expert. But what I can tell you is that I'm very, very thankful for what you do. And I very much support everything that you're doing. Actually, I just have 2 requests. One, you consider bumping up the winter break to before the holidays versus after. It would give our littles a chance to quarantine in time to see their family members. It's a small thing. If it's doable, it would be wonderful for you to consider it. The second is I would request you consider purchasing HEPA 13 medical grade air purifiers for each of the classrooms. They're roughly about $250 each. They can totally clean a 800 square foot room in about 30 minutes. They'll go down to about 1.1 micron for the coronavirus. They're also effective against the flu virus, so it is a great long-term investment. That would be my second request. If you need additional information, I know this is something Minnetonka has done, so they would also be a great resource, and it might be one that you already know about, but that was all. Just thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We have had, I would say, many, many hours of discussion around air purification and different standards, and we're bringing some world-class experts in to understand, which equipment might be advantageous and how to deploy it. There obviously are a lot of pros and cons. I've read more studies on air purification in the last couple of weeks. And I was in the air purification business for a long time, so thank you very much for your comments.
Thank you.
And thank you for being an essential employee. That's very commendable.
Hello, my name is Amanda Reiner. I have 2 children that go to Shirley Hills Primary, and we love Shirley Hills, and we love the district, which is quite frankly why we live here instead of somewhere else around the cities. I honestly just have really one question that's kind of been bugging me, honestly, since the beginning of the summer with the social distancing and whatnot. With the plan to go back fully in person at the moment for the primary levels, what does that look like for the kids when they need that one-on-one help from the teacher? Are they going to have to do that through the iPad with the teacher sitting at their desk? Are they going to actually be able to be close to their teacher? Because I have one kid in particular who needs more one-on-one help with some things than my other child does, and that's a significant concern. And some of the other parents I've spoke to, it was a concern on their end as well. I was just wondering what thought has been put into that, or if there's going to be more communication coming. I just wasn't sure.
I think you've addressed a concern of when we look at a number, it's some of our younger primary kids, it's some of our more medically fragile kids, or some of our special needs students, it's some of how we just offer education. And so right now we're in process of trying to figure that out, and this is a piece where you're going to see us work, adjust, improve. But does it work? And you could see things being more in that distance format of how we deliver them. And so I think this is new territory for a lot of different people, and we definitely need our staff's voices in as we work on providing. But I can tell you that safety and the best for kids are 2 tenets that we're going to continue to hold. And obviously, there's going to be compromises on how things worked in the past and how we have to do in the future. But the effort to do that as best as we can will be there.
See. Hi, I'm Jennifer Velarde. I have a sophomore now and a recent graduate. Thank you for all that you have done. This thing is really, really sensitive. I have a few questions. My first question is, were staff given the option to stay home if they're not comfortable?
So as far as staffing goes, right now, we don't have any distance learning numbers to share. And so as far as being able to do this from home, the only thing at this point is for those staff that are on medical leave, we're looking at that option. Then when we start seeing distance numbers, we're going to be able to make some more options. Obviously, staff have an option of taking leave, but that comes at a financial consequence to them, which is our
Thank you. Who teaches the distance learning if you do all distance? Is it going to follow, will you be in a section so that it's seamless, so that if you choose first quarter and then second quarter you decide to go back into the building, is it seamless that you just slide right into your first, second, third period teachers?
So in a setting of primary, based on our numbers, the kids are going to be in a cohort and we'll assign them. For middle school and high school, you're going to follow your schedule and your teachers are going to be your teachers that you went through. So if you started in person, those would be your teachers. And then if you were a distance and that was your schedule, those would be your teachers. Now, again, as we see numbers and different things, there might be some adjustments, but that's how we see starting this year.
Okay. Positive cases or symptoms. My student is in an English class and there is a positive case. Who quarantines? The whole class? The teacher? only the 5 people closest to them? How does that work?
Quarantining factors, and I'm sorry if my mic wasn't working for those people at home on the other questions, but the quarantine will be by the regional support team that'll do the contact tracing, but we also have a district group that if we see certain clusters that exist, we have that ability to do that as a district.
Okay, so just so that I'm clear, so if my child is in an English class and the teacher or another student is positive, I wouldn't necessarily be notified ASAP if I want to pull them and get them tested? Or is that you're going to wait for data? I just want to make sure I understand.
Yeah, so the information comes from MDH. We cannot give the child's name to it. And what I addressed is what information we can. We know that parents want to be responsive with this of different thoughts. So we're right now working on, can we give that we've had a positive case in first grade at a building and we can give that information? We'd want to equip that. I don't know how detailed we can get without the data privacy of identifying. MDH would be doing that contact tracing, and if needed, the district could do that. But I think there's 3 levels to it. One is we want to provide information that allows staff, parents, families, students to know what exists in their building. The second thing is the regional support teams of contact tracing, and what could happen faster than that is our district team, and it depends on how that spread is looking.
Okay. So for instance, in elementary school back in the day, and I think even in Grandview days, if somebody had pink eye, strep throat, lice, we always received a little flyer home or an email pretty much that day telling us that that was happening in the classroom, but we might not see that.
Yeah, I can only answer it how I did at this point of through the tracing. Kelly, is there anything more that you would want to add on that? So through our district, if you were sitting in a class next to the person that was positive, the district contact tracing can notify those people at a faster rate.
Okay, that's what I was hoping for. And without utilizing lockers in Grandview in the high school, I know lockers are, backpacks and such are a no-no in many schools because of safety. What is going to be, do they not bring their backpack? What's that going to look like?
You touch on what we're very cognizant on, and there's been discussion of how do you provide COVID safety and then also safety as we look at other things. So safety if it's violence in classrooms or et cetera. And so right now we're going through, the big thing that we know is doing lockers in those banks is something that if we have them putting things in and out of their lockers in there, you won't be able to keep social distancing. And so more information from the schools on how that will be working.
Okay, thank you. I think that's all of them.
Thank you.
Kevin, I would like to clarify, because the lady in the back asked a very good question that we didn't touch on, but the idea that you might want to quarantine for 2 weeks before visiting grandparents, or, I mean, everybody has the option of going to distance learning. So if you wanted to go see the grandparents, you would simply go to distance learning at the appropriate point. That's correct, right?
Yep, they do have the option to enter distance learning.
So I think as opposed to changing our schedule, that's probably the best way to look at that. I'm sorry?
She gave a thumbs up.
Thank you.
So there's a repeat of what Jennifer asked a question and Kelly gave a response, and people that are live stream want to hear a little bit more of what was said. And I think the piece that Kelly informed for people that are live stream is the district will have the ability to more quickly insert ourselves to say that a child that tested positive was sitting in contact tracing distance of your kids, so parents can be able to react to it.
And realize, I mean, Kelly, kick me if I'm wrong here, but you know, we're asking people to self-check. So if you keep your child home because they have a fever, you know, I guess it's up to the parent whether they notify the district or not that the child has a positive test. Is that what we're looking for, or?
So Kelly said we get notified if there's a positive case in the school. I think again in Westonka, we are going to probably find out most times before MDH just how our community works, and that again our commitment is safety, and that we would be seeing this with fidelity of making sure that we can communicate as well as we can with families.
Hi, I'm Melissa Abernethy. I have going to be 7th grader and going to be a junior, and then I also teach 1st grade at Hilltop. And I was just wondering, a couple questions. One, in regard to, well, first of all, thank you so much for all the hard work that the school board and the district has been doing just to keep our kids safe and the staff safe. We really, really appreciate it. But my questions, concerns are, in regards to the elementary cohorts, do we have an idea of what that's going to look like? People in the community have asked, is that going to look like a normal classroom that you would see where averaging between 20 and 24 or a little higher depending on the year? Or is it going to be smaller when it's considered in person?
So is the question about class size with primary cohorts for distance learning, that hasn't been set yet. We would be working, again, administration with staff looking at, I think some of the things that we'd have to consider is what are the grades of the kids, what's the range, what are the needs of the students, and try to take those things in account so we can set that up for success.
Okay. And then you briefly mentioned about just ways to help keep kids safe and supply sharing and what classrooms are going to look like. And I know that we have teacher meetings scheduled coming up. And I guess I'm just wondering, is there a good resource to help teachers prepare? Because as a teacher, you know, people have said, well, how are you going to do this? Have you been preparing all summer? And my answer is yes, but I don't totally know because we've never done this before. And so to think, is there a place to go? Because we want to be as best prepared as we're being asked to answer these questions. So I just wondered if...
Is the question on staff development of how to do that in your classroom, or the answer to the question of the disinfecting of?
Not so much the cleaning, but like the sharing supplies, what, you know, like due to the personalized learning efforts we've done over the last 5+ years, we've, you know, turned to like more collaborative learning where we all have tables and we have, you know, comfy chairs and things like that. And so just wondering, like, it took us a long time to get there. And so as we're setting up classrooms and trying to think, we're just trying to prepare. And so just wondering if there's, I don't know, places to look for best practices or things that you guys have reached out to that we could be looking at as well, just so that as we're preparing as a staff, we have resources to go to?
Yes. With our building principals, with their staff, as they work with SIT teams of trying to provide staff development and resource, but yes, you should expect that from us.
Okay, so you'll, okay. And then this kind of just piggybacks off the question about distance learning. So if we're teaching, I mean, if kids are in our classroom and they decide to do distance learning because they want to go to the grandparents' house for, you know, in a couple of weeks to visit, are you thinking that those children at the elementary school would then jump into the distance learning cohort? Or that somehow they would be able to get, like if they were in my classroom, that they'd be able to get instruction from me? Just thinking about how to make it as streamline as
I
possible?
think there's a big depends on that one of
Okay.
saying, for example, if you're in hybrid and someone goes for a while and you've had them for a period of time in school, that might look different. If you have someone that's quarantined at the beginning of school, do they work with that cohort? But one thing we know that the primaries are going to want to look at is with quarantined students, using the cohort or using classroom teachers is one thing that we want to work with you guys on the best way of delivery.
Okay. And then is there a resource as far as like from a safety perspective of how to approach being with kids, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Well, I think it's just the question that was asked before, and that's one of the things that we got to work. So I think on these questions, these are things that our principals are grinding on, but to engage with our leaders and some of our SIT teams and our groups of trying to think through, these are the things that we got to help staff through. And I don't want you to just think that this is a blank page. These are things that are working and developing and people are racing with. But I think all the points are things that we face as we deliver.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I also just want to say I can appreciate for staff, it's very unsatisfying. You wish that this is a person that teaches in wherever that you need to go because she has this all figured out. But I want to say that there are people that have great information about how we are going to advance this, that there's people working on these topics, and we're gonna get there. I'm sorry for the stress that our staff face. I'm sorry about the stress that our parents face. But I know that we'll get there.
As you can tell, I'm about as tall as this, so I'll wash it. My name is Michelle Schisler. I have two kids that are both sophomores at the high school. So I have a few questions. I'm confused about the distance learning. If you all of a sudden choose, how is that going to look? Like, so are you telling me that it's going to be, you're going to be on a screen at the same time as somebody in the class? Or is there totally separate teachers for distance learning? I'm confused.
Yeah, at the high school level, you're going to have your classroom teacher. Your schedule they're going to be teaching hybrid in this model.
Okay.
And so they will have those kids, some are going to be distance, some are going to be in person. For those that want to choose distance only, instead of coming in 2 days, they're going to have all their days distance, but they will be connecting, doing that same curriculum.
So they won't be live Zoomed at the class at the same time as the teacher is teaching in the class?
The teacher there could be different options of how the teacher wants to deliver, which we're working through. So one, it could be a live stream full lesson. It could be that it is a check-in at the beginning and there's videos, things through Schoology that they're working through. And so there'll be different options of how that could look at the secondary level.
I think one of the things that, Kevin mentioned the money that might be available through the CARES Act to the cities. We understand that this could become the new normal. I mean, we started looking at this a long time ago and, spent a lot of time, Mr. Femright and others spent a lot of time preparing so that we wouldn't lose student days if we had excess snowstorms or cold weather. So we were kind of out in front of this, nowhere near, ready for this type of thing. But as we look at spending priorities in the future, I think that getting more capabilities to do things like high quality live streaming and things like that will allow some classes to, become more real time as opposed to Kevin mentioned that we've got to give teachers the opportunity to prepare to deal with not only the in-person, but also the hybrid lessons, the distance lessons. So I think as we look at our available resources, and at least my intent is to look at spending money to outfit the classrooms to be able to do more real-time streaming and things like that to lessen the burden on the teachers. So I think you're going to see an evolution there, and it's going to come down to technology and money.
Okay, which most things do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then my question becomes, is there like a privacy issue then with that? As if you're, live streaming something, say, and there's other people in the house,
Yeah.
is there privacy? I mean,
We-
so say some kid is getting yelled at by his teacher, and a mom that's not related to that kid is walking by. I mean, is there any type of privacy laws that you guys have to follow?
Well, we would hope that the teacher wouldn't really be yelling at the
Okay,
student.
that's.
We are going to provide 6-foot sticks.
Yeah,
So I
I'm
think
sure that never happens.
I think
but-
that's one big piece, though, that we're working with our staff and our attorneys on what are the privacies. And so that's something that's been engaged with for a while now. And
Okay. So then my next question is lunch at the high school. If you have to maintain a 6-foot distance, how many kids would be at one table? And would you have to eat with that same kid every single day? What if you bring your lunch, but you forget your drink and you need a drink? I mean, how is that going to work?
Yeah. So, yes, on a hybrid schedule, it's 6-foot social distancing. You're going to see, for example, at the high school, 6-foot tables, student on each end. As far as, so we can uphold those levels. As far as the kids being quarantined to certain groups or whether they can go with other kids, we haven't defined that yet, but if 6-foot social distancing is kept and how their classes work, where they're mixing, I would guess that they would be able to sit with who they'd want to at that lunch.
Okay. And then my other question is, as you were talking about symptoms, a lot of these symptoms are cold symptoms, a lot of these symptoms are strep symptoms. Is my kid going to get yanked out of class because they're coughing up their lung, which, happens? I don't keep my kids home because they're coughing. They don't have any other symptom. They're going to school. Are they going to get yanked out of school and quarantined because they're coughing?
Yeah. I think that's such a good question, because I think there's people are going to see someone coughing and they're going to, some people will say, is he going to get yanked out because of just a cough? And other people are going to be saying, aren't you going to be taking the student out because they're coughing? And so we're going to face those kind of challenges in this new environment all the way out. And so again, we need some flexibility with parents that we're going to use compassion. We're going to check with people to make sure they're okay and well, and we're going to continue to grow in how we do this. But there is going to be a safety precaution of if a teacher or an educator feels that someone's symptomatic, they have the ability to make sure we can check out that they're okay. And we'll do that with respect, but I don't think it's going to be that you have one cough and all of a sudden you're going out.
I just want to make sure that it's not going to be your child was coughing and now you're going to get a COVID test before you can come back to school.
I think the state guidelines pretty much center around temperature, so.
No, it's actually all the categories, but I would say that we have our nurse in each building that will be doing those kind of testing and have those conversations with our parents.
Okay, that's all I have.
Any additional questions? I applaud the great questions. I mean,
I just would say as we close this piece that, of course, there's a lot of questions out there by our staff, by families, and I know it's hard to wait for information, but one thing I want to tell you as you wait for information is it's not that people are like, okay, I'm done for work today and I'll get to that the next day. People are really trying to take ideas from all different angles. We're trying to do this the best way we can. We're trying to include people, and yet decisions have to be made. And so we're trying to push decisions. We're trying to collaborate enough, trying to get enough input from different people as we go forward. And so we find ourselves in a place that we know we have to keep on moving. We want to talk to people, we want to plan, but the plans have to keep on going. And so I know I'm asking a lot for parents to be patient on information. What you can expect is getting email from buildings an email from buildings this week on a communication plan of how you're going to continue to get updates about more and more information. That's going to include things like how we're doing open house. It's going to be doing things of what does that schedule look like. It's going to be after we've had some more time with our staff to talk about more detailed plans, some of what Melissa asked about or some of our other planning. You're going to continue to have us work on health and safety practices of what you can expect. We're going to have videos for students on how we're going to operate in these new environments so we can help educate them. We're going to do training with students and families on staff on what the testing or the self-screening looks like. And so it really, to be honest, it really feels like the ocean out there that we got to get ready, and we keep on plugging away, but we have a really dedicated team. People that really care about our staff and our kids and doing the best education, keeping people safe. And so, again, you have our commitment to keep on going. You have our commitment to keep on improving. We just really need the constructive collaboration. We really need to have good communication. And we're going to apply consistency, hopefully moving forward by most people's eyes.
And I think a great example is, the state says you have to have a mask policy. Well, we just got the mask policy yesterday or something. So somebody wrote a mask policy and got it out to the school. So a lot of this is, is happening in real time, basically. So. If you'd like to read the mask policy, it's interesting. All right, if there aren't any additional questions, then let's move on to the consent agenda. And Kevin, what's the best format if people have additional questions? Email? Check the website first?
I would say look at the website, know that more information is coming. We want to help you with your decision making, and so you can email building principals, you can email myself, and we'll do our best in keeping up with that.
All right. Chair moves approval of the consent agenda. Is there a second?
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Chair moves approval of discussion action item A, the approval of the resolution adopting the base learning model for the 2021 school year. Is there a second?
Second.
Questions, comments? Okay. Carol, could you call the roll for this one, please? Aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion is unanimous. Chair moves approval of 7B, the approval of the addition of 4 full-time distance learning coordinators effective August 31, 2020. Is there a second?
Second.
Anybody have any questions or comments? I applaud this, even though I'm hesitant. I don't like spending money but I think this is important to enhance the learning experience that we're giving our children. And these will all be teachers.
Correct.
Okay. Other questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Chair moves approval of 7C, the approval of the addition of Westonka Gives as a lettering activity. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Kevin, can you explain this? I mean, it's first I've heard of it, and I'm just probably out of touch, but is this like volunteering, doing a project? What exactly is this?
There's hours that you can earn and points towards lettering for service to community and others. And so Jeff Peterson, with a former alumni, worked on this as an option, which I think is a great way to highlight kids' efforts.
And it's a significant number of hours too, right? Was it 150
hours?
Or 75 with in one particular project?
No, I like it.
Yeah, it's, I think, an exciting option.
Any questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Thanks for sharing that. Chair moves approval of 7D, the approval of the resolution for the sale of bonds, Series 2028, to refinance 2012A school building bonds that built this facility and the WAC, correct?
This,
No, this is the new one.
yep,
This is the.
this would be what's remaining
Okay.
on the bond from 2011.
Okay. It's great savings. Any other questions, or all those in favor?
Second?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Hey, when you're saving $780,000,
I know.
seconds are automatic in my book. Are there any other bonds that we're looking at potentially refinancing, or we got such a good rate on this one, it's probably not too much better, huh, Ralph?
I would be surprised.
Chair moves approval of 7E, the approval of the specific remote working options effective August 31, 2020 through November 6, 2020. Is there a second?
Second.
Questions? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion is unanimous. And a late item, Chair moves approval of 7F, the approval of the first reading of the face covering policy, and this is intended to be approved on the first reading, which is not normal. So, if you haven't read it, any questions, or excuse me, second?
A second.
Any questions?
Kevin, I do have one question, which real simply, been listening to reports the last couple days where they've been testing various types of masks, and some are more effective than others, and I'd have to look at the policy to see if that is impacted by that at all, but is that something that, I assume maybe MDH would be looking at that first, or MDE, if they would make any changes on that? Is that fair?
I think there continues to be guidance at that level of what kind of masks are allowed or not. And to be honest with the community, people want a lot of different things purchased, but with how things change, you can sometimes be too far ahead of things too, because I'll use a quick example. We purchased an incredible amount of hand sanitizer, and then the reports were coming about certain hand sanitizers that should not be used. And literally for the sleep I got that night, I was awake, just got it to get to school to see that we didn't order the kind that was now not. And so I think one thing, we're going to keep on evolving with the change, but at this point, we feel good with what we have.
We're following the MDH
Yes.
and MDE here.
The
right?
MDE
It's very broad. I mean, I think we've gone above and beyond, and, you know, it's up to the parents. I mean, I just read a statistic that said if it's not, you know, if it doesn't fit tight, it loses 60% of its effectiveness. So, you know, it's kind of a broad thing. But I did have a question, Kevin, on whether a face shield alone is acceptable or whether a face shield has to be worn with a mask.
So for students that have a medical note that they should not be wearing this, they can wear a face shield. If they have a medical note that they should not be wearing a face shield, then they would not do that. For K-8 students, where a face mask is problematic, is how it's written into the executive order, is that they would have the option of a face shield. People can wear both if they choose.
Do teachers have the option of wearing the face shields? They do, right?
Yes, and all staff will receive face shields.
But that's not acceptable on its own without a mask, or?
When the guidance for staff is, again, the same with the medical piece, but then when they're instructing, it's kind of as we're able to remove our mask down as we're speaking, they have the ability to wear a shield instead of wearing their mask at that time.
Thank you.
Okay. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion's unanimous. Is there anything else that we should discuss tonight? Any other questions or comments? All right, the chair moves for adjournment. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody, and please be safe.